clubpod.co, clubpod.co, clubpod.co.
Okay.
Hi folks, this is another podcast thing from Golden. Sit down! Sit! Sandy! 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 Just sit down! Sit down, she's there. Hi folks, this is just another podcast thing for clubpod.co. It's clubpod.co, not to be associated with any other podcast thing of that name. This is just a little bit of a news article. Today, the football legend striker Ian St John has died aged 82. Now, I don't like football, can't stand it. Bores the pants off me, or soccer as Americans call it. But he did this show with Jimmy Greaves called the Saint and Greavsie show, and it was the funniest thing ever. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is way before we had podcasts or anything. This was a show on ITV in the UK, and basically they did what I'd say is how you do a podcast. It was a sort of it was a football show. If I remember, it was about half an hour long, and each week they'd do. It was presented by these two guys who were used to be footballers, and again, from the football side, I wouldn't know them. I mean, I don't follow football, but they'd come on, and Ian St John, I forget. I think he came under his nickname, but he'd be very professional. It was like a newsreader. He had a perfect, straight way of doing things, and then sat next to him, Jimmy Greaves would just say something bizarre. It was, but they just basically said whatever they fancied, and it'd be so you'd have something like Ian St John would be talking serious about something, and then Jimmy Greaves would just say, "Oh yeah, I had a cup of tea in the cafe with him," and it would just, I can't describe how funny it is. If you go on Google, if you go on YouTube, look at the old shows, cut out the football news bits where they do articles, because a lot of the show was they'd have it was all professionally done by people going to football clubs and talking about football with the football clubs, basically like a podcast. But what made it funny, what made it legendary, were these two would just go off the wall, totally could say what they wanted, and it was basically in a sort of podcast format, and that's why I thought I'd cover it today, just because. Sorry, someone just called then. Forgot what I was saying. So anyway, this is just a quick one, basically just to say, one of the formats, if you're planning on doing a podcast, listen to go on YouTube and Google Saint and Greavsie show, and just watch these two in action, because to me, they're the first, and probably, I still think they're the funniest people who've ever presented anything like this ever. For me, there's three legends, if you want to look at, to me, how to do a show. You've got the Saint and Greavsie show, then which is the UK one. I think it was around the 90s, but watch them, they're hysterical. Just watch them two in action. Then you've got James Whale from. But it's hard to find the radio shows. When I was a kid, he did a radio show called on Radio Air, and it was also put on TV. The TV show was nowhere near as good as the radio show. No way. They tried to get copy of the fact. I don't know if they did it because they did it on a budget. Oh, the cat's coming in. But the show itself was on the radio. I'd listened when I was a kid and never go into school till late. I was always late for school because I was always listening to James Whale, and he was incredibly funny. So I'm just moving everything. What he'd do is, people would phone in and they'd just rip them to pieces. There was an old lady, she's probably died ages ago, and she just loved to be insulted. She'd phone in the show, and he'd just call her a fat, smelly old woman. It really went to town, but she was in hysterics, and it was funny. Doesn't sound funny when I say it. It sounds awful, but when you used to listen, it was hysterical. And the third one is the American one. Oh God, it's gone off my mind now. What his name is? Oh God, what's his name? Oh God, it's the God Almighty, I'm dreadful with memory. I'm doing this half asleep. It'll probably come to me before. I'm just googling it now. Bear with me. Howard Stern. I found his name. It came to me. Howard Stern is also at the Classic. Now, being in the UK, don't hear there's probably others in America, but I don't get to hear them because I'm in the UK. But Howard Stern, he's been on films and things, and his style's brilliant. So those are the sort of three groups I've always said were the finest. But like I said, the Saint and Greavsie show was one of the greatest joys you've ever heard. And I say this when I hate football. Can't stand it, never watched it more than 5 minutes, as it's the most boring thing I've ever seen. But boy, I used to love that show. But as I say, if you can get a chance, listen. And also, I think finding old James Wells shows, you can see him online. The newer stuff, you see, because he's not allowed to get away with the stuff he used to. And so I mean, he's still good now, but you could see it. But I don't think any radio station, they might do, but I don't think they'd allow him to get away with what they did on the James Wells show on Radio Where, and boy, it was good. It's one of the things I wish I'd recorded. It's never think about the time. Although I don't think I had the recording gear, but it was classic. It was just the greatest thing ever. I'm actually thinking about. I wish I'd recorded every single night it'd been on. So I'd seen if I could have got the copyright to play it back. But anyway, this is just a bit of a quick one because I wasn't going to plan to do it, but because he died, and I was going to talk about the show, in a few months, but I might as well say it now because he's died, and it was legendary. Just the show was just legend. And like I say, to me, that's the earliest podcasts type show you'll ever hear, and it's the finest. If you really want to ever now to do a podcast show, listen to them, even if you're not from the UK. It'll just blow you away. All right, then. Like I said, that's just a quick one. Bye. Oh, shoot.
Clubpod.co, clubpod.co, clubpod.co.